I'm Joanne Darcy, and you're listening to High Performance Woman Podcast, where we're elevating stories of high performance women from across the globe. Here's what we have coming up for you today.
You start exploring the inner world, and the rewards there are peace, purpose, passion, play. There's no way I could sit and meditate. Absolutely no way. My mind was like a Ferrari. As soon as I closed my eyes, honestly, it was worse. Stop. I'm going to tell you something that's going to save 10 years of pain. So I'm going to tell all the listeners here that's going to save 10 years of pain, because this is what it took me. Why don't we just do it?
My guest today is Lisa MK Ling. Lisa is a human potential coach, an author and speaker. She's also been a world karate champion. She's a lawyer, a musician and a mother. With her unique flow method, Lisa discovered through her own journey out of darkness. She teaches people of all ages, all over the world, how to get in, stay in and live in the flow so they can rise together to their highest creative potential. Lisa, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to High Performance Woman Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me here. It's a real honor, and I'm really grateful to be able to speak to you today.
I absolutely am intrigued by the whole concept of flow. As a 40-year-old woman, just gone 40, I have lived the vast majority of my life, I think, in my head. And I'm only really realising that over the last number of years. And I think that connection for me between my mind and my body has been so important. But I'm still very early on that journey. So I'm really interested to learn all I can about you and about the flow method and how you teach that as well.
Awesome. I'd love to share with you my first experience of flow to kind of it'll explain what flow is and then what it can do in your life.
Yeah.
So a quarter century ago, when I was 27, I had an experience that changed the whole course of my life. I was fighting in the finals of the British Karate Championship. You don't have to actually be British to fight in the championship. And I was in England doing my master's degree in law, but my real passion was martial arts. And I was losing badly in this final. And I really, and that was causing me a lot of stress because obviously I'd trained for thousands of hours. And I really wanted to win, not just to win, but to express my full potential, right? I had trained so hard. I wanted to unleash all of that, not have it locked up inside of me. But there was all this fear and hesitation and doubt that was holding me back. So I was there standing on the line, my white karate gi, my black belt, my red, fist mitts. I'm staring at my opponent. We know that when the referee says go, we're going to exchange blows. And I was down by 2 points. And I was really there wasn't, like, a match is only 2 minutes long. There's not a lot of time to make up those points. And I could have panicked at that moment, but something else happened that I never expected or planned. I looked at the clock and I saw that there was 30 seconds left. And I took a deep breath, and then something changed or clicked, like, inside of me. And I suddenly knew I was going to win. I didn't wish, I didn't hope, I didn't believe, I knew. It's like a deeper, I think every woman knows what I'm talking about. There's some things you just know, right? It's not logical, you just know. It's like you feel it in your entire body.
Yeah.
A lot of the most important decisions of life are made, like that. So I knew I was going to win. And then in the next 30 seconds, I fought like I knew I was going to win. My body did it was deeper than my mind. It was almost like it came from my spirit. My spirit instructed my mind, which instructed my body. And so I was fast. My timing, target, technique was perfect. I was strong. My strategy was exactly on. I was a completely different fighter than I had been, basically a second earlier, where I was slow. I couldn't score a point for the life of me. And, everything was just not working. So I ended up scoring 2 points within 30 seconds. The referee said stop. We went to sudden death overtime. And then I scored my favorite technique, which is like a punch to the face and then a reverse punch to the body. Karate is touch contact to the face, so you have to have a lot of control, but then it's full contact to the body. And it feels like it's the best feeling in the world. It's called sinking a gyak. because yakizuki is the Japanese word for a reverse punch.
Okay.
And so you sing that yak and it's like, it feels amazing. And I knew I'd won. So I walked out of that match going, what just happened? Right? I was losing and then all of a sudden I won. And weeks and days later, I talked to my coach. I was like, what was that? And she said, oh, that's the zone. You got into the zone. And so the first thing for me was even realizing that this thing existed, that there's a state of being that you can get into where basically your full potential just flows out. And I'm not suggesting that it's a reason not to train. You still have to do all your training and all the work before, but instead of it being locked inside of you, it flows out effortlessly. And then the second thing was that what I realized is that the change didn't happen from the outside. Like I didn't suddenly get new skills. I didn't suddenly become better. It was deep within me, and the change was inside out, and it got me completely different results. And so the reason I'm telling you this story is because I realized that if I wanted to win, getting into the flow was the most effective way for me to rise to my full potential. And so I became obsessed with learning, studying, experimenting, like all about flow. And then that's been basically the last 25 years. And then that went on to, living it as a mom, and then teaching it all around to people of all ages all around the world. And now through that process, developing a method. And I started to notice patterns with people, whether they're old or young or male, female, this background, that background, doesn't matter where. I'm in the Philippines right now. I've lived on 5 continents. Doesn't matter where in the world you are, what color of your skin. There's these similar patterns on the inside that we go through, similar fears, similar ways to break through your fear, similar ways to regulate, integrate, elevate body, mind, and spirit, which is what you need to do if you're going to rise to your full potential. Because your full potential isn't just in your mind. It's not just in your body. It's not just in your spirit. You have to integrate all these 3 parts of yourself. So the flow method sort of came out of that. And now I'm at this stage where I want to share that with more people.
Yeah. It sounds like an amazing experience to have. And I suppose it's the fact that it happened unbeknownst to yourself and you've kind of taken it and explored it and now turned it into what you do is unbelievable.
It was such a dramatic thing, that I think it happened like that for a reason. Everyone has experiences of flow. That's the thing. You don't actually, in a way, you don't have to learn flow. You have to remember flow. Because as children, we go into the flow automatically. Look at children on a playground. They're just free. Their emotions are free. Their bodies are free. They're just expressing themselves. There's not a lot of, we learn how to hold back, right? We get trained out of ourselves as we grow up. But like babies and children, you're just expressing yourself. So the key is to then get all those structures of life and hold on to that connection and that expression. That's the balance. That's the balance. Well, that's the challenge.
So how could people know if they've experienced flow recently? How could they identify that?
There's a few qualities that identify flow. Number one is that you're loving what you do. Flow is a blend of 2 states. You're focused and alert, but instead of being stressed, you're calm and relaxed. Normally, those 2 things don't go together. Normally, we're calm and relaxed, and then we're like drowsy or sleepy, or we're focused and alert, and then we're stressed.
And are we aware as it's happening, do you think, or are we only aware afterwards?
Usually, usually it happens by accident, I feel like you just working on something, it's challenging your skill, you're drawing out your skills, you're having to focus. And then all of a sudden you lose track of time and you're like, oh, I just wrote that whole thing. Or I just had I just had this amazing conversation on my podcast. Oh, the time is over, right?
Yeah.
When you lose track of time, that's usually a good indication that you're in the flow, because you're just in it and you're just enjoying it and you get your best results out of that.
And how do you distinguish that between being distracted? So if you're in flow, so in this conversation and in all the conversations that I have on the podcast, it is as you describe. It's, 60 minutes is over and I feel like we've only just begun. And how do you distinguish that between, in the modern world, people scrolling on their phone and all of a sudden an hour is gone? So what's the difference in feeling between distraction and flow?
Right. Good. Very excellent question. Because there's lots of ways of just, you could be watching Netflix and all of a sudden 3 hours has gone by. So with flow, you're tapping into your skills. There's a skill challenge graph matrix where you have challenge on the y-axis and your skill on the bottom. And the flow zone kind of goes up at an angle. So where the challenge meets your skill, that's where you get into the flow. Where the challenge is greater than your skill, that's anxiety zone. Where the challenge is lower than your skill, that's boredom zone.
Okay.
And you're not really in the flow when you're in boredom, and you're not in the flow when you're in anxiety. And there's different ways to get into the flow. Those two places. You have to do the opposite, actually. So there isn't one way of getting into the flow. It depends where you are. So the first thing that flow requires, like to get into the flow by accident doesn't require anything. To get into the flow on purpose, which is what I wanted, right? That happened. And then I was like, okay, I want to get into the flow on purpose on a specific day at a specific time for these 2 minutes of my match. Not 2 minutes later, not 2 minutes before, but these 2 minutes, right? Otherwise, I didn't need to spend 25 years like studying it. I could just kind of let it happen by accident. But I wanted it to be really deliberate. And so I needed to understand and break it down. And I think that's where my legal mind helped, because that's what law is. You're breaking everything down and then reconstructing stories depending on which side you're on. So it helped me to understand and break down all the different pieces and then reconstruct it in such a way that I could experiment and navigate and then refine and hone that so that it worked.
Yeah, because that's a very specific time frame, 2 minutes on a specific time and a specific day. And I like the way you described that. If the skill and the challenge, if it's too high, that it's anxiety. If it's too low, it's boredom. And I think a lot of people, a lot of high performance women experience the anxiety side of things potentially more than the boredom side of things, but not always the case, obviously.
You're always pushing yourself out of that comfort zone, so you're always rising. But then as you get more experience getting into the flow, your zone widens. There's one point where I decided that that whole square is the flow for me.
Okay.
And that's when I realized I was living in the flow. In the beginning, there's flow state where you get into this zone for a few moments. And then I wanted to stay there longer. And that required different things. But then when I retired and I became a mother, I realized I needed flow in a different way. And actually, the reason I'm talking to you today is not actually so much about the karate. It's more about from when I was being a mother, because the things that made me a great fighter made me a terrible mother. And I found myself shouting at my kids every single day. And the whole reason I really dove into it at another level, not just flow state, but flow consciousness, is because I wanted to be a better mother. And I realized that I needed to pull from everything I'd learned as an athlete, but then I needed to add other things that would make it relevant for just daily life, which is not a karate match. It's not a sprint. It's not a 2-minute interval. It's a marathon. So I needed to adapt it. And that was this whole other journey. And when I say the darkness, it's like, I think a lot of women will resonate with this. So the high achievers, right? You achieve. And I, by 35, like I had all those things that I was trying to get. I had all the medals. I had 2 law degrees. I married the love of my life. We had 2 amazing children. We were living and traveling all overseas. On paper, I should have been happy. And I felt completely hollow inside. And I was like, what the heck? Like, this is not part of the prescription. And so flow actually brought back the joy for me. The characteristics of flow is that you're loving what you're doing. It brings out your joy. Flow gives you external rewards. It can help you to win, whatever that looks like in your arena. It's not just for athletes, it's in any arena. But it also gives you internal rewards. And that's where I realized that the meaning of flow for me was feel the love within. Like F, feel, LO, love, and W within. And I decided that was the true meaning of flow for me. And that's when I started to really live in the flow. And I'm 53 now and become the flow. Right. I feel like after 50, it was like in my bones. It's a way of life. It's a way of think about the world. It's a perspective.
And what you described there, I think, will resonate with a lot of people in terms of, you could put loads of descriptions on it in terms of reaching the top of the first mountain, going through life, ticking all the boxes, and then kind of getting to a point where you feel, oh, is this it? So for anybody that resonates with, what's next? What should happen next for you to start to begin to experience flow and slowly move towards what you describe you have now?
Well, if you've realized that you've risen to those heights, and then, what I've noticed with a lot of my clients is they rise to the heights and then they fall down to the pit of despair. And basically, you really feel like something big is missing from your life and it's literally killing you. Some people literally physically with diseases and whatnot, others with relationships, others with just like crazy. Some people get depressed. I've worked with Pulitzer Prize winning authors. They're happy for a month, depression. Grand Slam tennis, happy for a while, depressed. Like it's a pattern. It doesn't matter, men, women, it's like a pattern. You're seeking purse, power, prestige, praise, which are all external. You get that fuels you and you rise to that, right? And it's wonderful in a way because you cultivate all these qualities within yourself in order to do that. Focus, determination, discipline, intensity, like all of these are the yang, yang, like the masculine, the emanating of the energies in the world, like that masculine energy, right? Which is wonderful. But then if you don't know how to connect to the feminine energy, the yin, the being energy, which is what I didn't know at that time, then you fall into the pit of despair because you're like, this isn't making me happy. So at that point, you're ready and you're rock bottom. I called that my rock bottom, but it's also a rock bottom opportunity because now I'm ready to learn something new.
Yeah.
And for a high achiever, you have to be ready. Otherwise, you're not going to do it because it's not going to be a priority. Because everything else is more important. But this has to come onto the list. And as soon as you're ready to start exploring that, then you can take a trip to your inner world. And there's so many different ways to do that, but you start exploring the inner world, and the rewards there are peace, purpose, passion, play.
Wow.
And those are often not things that high achievers value. I didn't, right? Play and joy and all of that wasn't a thing because that's not going to get me my goals, right? My father comes from poverty in Malaysia. And so I went back there just recently and saw like, of course, like play and joy. And that wasn't going to get him food. That wasn't going to get him out of poverty. And so I had a deeper understanding of where that came from, right? But that's not my life now. Now I can blend the two together. I don't need to completely let go of all the external stuff. I still want to achieve. I still want to have that. And, for a while I made all that wrong. And then I went all the way into this whole other world of like just meditating and nurturing and caring and healing and like way, way, way into that. And then my kids kind of went off the rails. I was like, kids need boundaries, kids need guidance. Like they need love, but they also need a lot of, like, they need you to be powerful as well, but from a place of love. And so I realized that I needed to blend the love and the power together. And that to me is flow. That's that challenge and that skill. Like when you're blending these two parts of yourself together, that's when you're in the flow.
Yeah. I think for high achievers, that what you described there in terms of going the other extreme, it's nearly like trying to achieve the best you can from the other extreme in terms of, the best meditation. And I think, again, a lot of people will relate to that when you feel that you're at that point and you see that there's another way, that you go too far into the other way. And I completely agree and get what you're saying about that blend, but it can be really, really hard as well. So how do you go about blending that?
Okay, I told this to like a 19-year-old that I met in Hawaii when I was there with my son on his gap year. He was having this crisis at 19, right? Because he'd struggled so hard to get into Stanford. He was a musician. He got that goal. He finished his first year. And then he was like, what the F? Is this all there is? And he completely let that go. And he started going into Buddhism and meditation all the time. And I said, Evan, stop. Like, I'm going to tell you something that's going to save 10 years of pain. So I'm going to tell all the listeners here this is going to save 10 years of pain, because this is what it took me, right? Instead of making all of that driving forward stuff, that achievement, wrong, and then saying, okay, that didn't give me what I want, so that must not be correct, and I'm going to try this way. And then going all the way over there and then having to blend the two together. You don't have to do it that way. What you can do is just bring down the achievement part from 100% or 99 or 90 or whatever it is to 50. And then just add in this other piece. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to go to 100 to 0 to 50. You can just go from 100 to 50 and do it more gracefully, right? In a way, let go of some of the intense, high achieving type A qualities and just make space. And one of the things is the space to not know and to listen and watch what shows up. Because as soon as you start making space for something new in your life that you haven't really done it in this way before, and you don't really know what you're doing, it's really uncomfortable, but that's part of the whole point. Like my kids taught me to let go. I had to let go, let go, let go. It's just been one big journey of letting go, having kids. And they're literally the only ones who could have taught me that, because anybody else, I would have been like, F you, like, cut the relationship, but you can't cut the relationship with your children. So when you make space to not know, and in a way it's a lot like playing jazz music, or a lot like a tennis match or a karate match, in that you are 50% of the equation. The other people in the band or the other people on the other side of the court, your opponent, your teammate, they're the other 50% of the equation. You don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. You can't control it all. And you go in with your structures and with your own knowledge of yourself, but then you also make space to just play and adapt and see what comes. And you can do that in life. And life will show you. Life knows what she's doing. She will show you the way, right? And you can also take my course, which is going to start in September.
Yeah.
There are lots of ways of speeding that up. I read hundreds of books. I went to workshops all over the world. I spent thousands of hours learning all of that. So you can definitely learn from me or other people who have done that. But at the end of the day, it starts with your intention, and that comes from your desire, and that usually comes from experiencing what you don't want.
Yeah.
So great gift to be at rock bottom for all those who feel like they're in that pit of despair. Because I've been there as well, where you just don't know what to do and you feel like you're deep in the pit of despair and your life feels hollow. And there's either depression or anger. I notice women either get depressed or they get angry. My whole thing was anger, which is just barely above depression, right? Depression, you feel powerless. Angry, you feel powerful. But they're right at the bottom of the whole emotional scale, right? They're very negative emotions. Nothing wrong with them, but it's just being aware and then realizing, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want to feel? Where do I want to be? And then stepping out of that place of feeling like you can't to you can, and then just making little tiny baby steps, right? Little tiny things. For me, it started there's no way I could sit and meditate. Absolutely no way. My mind was like a Ferrari. As soon as I closed my eyes, honestly, it was worse. There's no way, right? And so what I did, and the reason I wanted to meditate was because when I had that moment in the match, my mind was still. There were no thoughts. There was none of that chatter. Should I go? Should I not go? Is this the right moment? What if she moves? What if she blocks? There was none of that. It was just stillness. And the only thing I could think of to train that stillness, because I knew I needed that to get into the flow, was meditation. But I couldn't meditate. So what I did in the beginning is I turned the lights off. I lit a candle and I just stared at the flame and I breathed for like a few breaths. In the beginning, I could honestly only do it for like 5 or 10 seconds. And then my mind would just be off. Next. And then every day I would do that. And then gradually 5, 10 seconds became 15, 20, became 30 seconds, became a minute. I'm breathing as I'm doing this. So I'm engaging my body. And whenever my mind started to go off, I would just notice it. Okay, no problem. And just bring it back and look at the flame. Because a flame, it moves slightly. Like there's just enough movement that if you focus on the movement, it captures your mind, right? It's not like closing your eyes where your mind has nothing to focus on. My eyes are open, it has something to focus on.
Yeah.
And that's what I did at the beginning, because I think I've been like undiagnosed ADD probably for my whole life, right? ADD wasn't a thing 50 years ago. Now it's a thing, but that's how it started for me. Along with a deep desire, right?
Because a lot of people, when they hear meditation, will have had similar experiences to what you described there, or will start to do it for a few days, but potentially not see any benefits or not be fully sure about what the overall benefits are or what they should be looking for. So how could you explain that to people in terms of what to look out for day to day that you can attribute to a meditation practice? Or how do you know that you're making progress, particularly when we're talking about high achievers who measure themselves by their progress that they make every day?
Why don't we just do it?
Okay.
It'll take like 30 seconds. So I'm standing, you're sitting. So you just sit comfortably, stand tall. Like don't be slouching. Just kind of pull your shoulders back, tuck your hips under, plant your feet on the floor. I invite you you can close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes, but it does make it a little bit easier because then you don't have visual distractions. And then just take a deep breath in for 4 seconds. So breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now breathe out also for 4 seconds. And repeat 4 times. So another deep breath in and out. So you're breathing in through your nose and you're breathing out through your mouth. So the air is kind of going like a circle. It's going in and up your nose. Nice big deep breath. And then it's going down and out through your mouth. And again, as you breathe in, put your focus of your mind on your breath as it's going in. As you breathe out, just focus on breathing out. Let's do a couple more. Deep breath in. You can count the numbers if you want, but you don't have to. Okay, one last breath. Okay, and just open your eyes. So what do you notice about yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit? No judgment, just what do you notice that's changed?
I feel my body. I feel myself sitting on the chair. I notice myself sitting here, and I feel my mind feels less busy. But I think the main thing I can notice is how much I feel my body, that I feel I'm in my body rather than at the top of my head.
Right. That's called being present. Right? That's called being present in your body. And that's the beauty of the body. The body does not care about your last breath. It does not care about your next breath. It only cares about this breath. That's it. The body, when you get back into your body, you become present. And that is one of the first steps you need in order to be getting into the flow. So you're already, like, if you're not present with your whole being, how can you access your whole being? How can you fulfill the potential of your whole being? You can't.
Yeah.
Right. So the first is awareness, which is presence.
It's such a short space of time to make such a marked difference in how I feel.
Exactly, right? So this is like, if you do the math, right? Like 4 seconds in, it's a deep breath, but it's not like so deep that you're gasping for air, right? It's just a big, deep breath, 4 seconds. And 4 seconds out, again, it's a nice long exhale. So that's 8 seconds for one breath. Times 4 breaths, 8 times 4 is 32. In 32 seconds, you can change your state. We did 2 rounds, so we did 2 of those. 1 round is 4 breaths. We did about another round. So we did a minute and 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. In 1 minute, to have that much of a change, like for you to even notice a change, it's at least a 10% change.
Yeah. And I would say, if I was to put a number on it, definitely higher than that, from how I feel now versus how I felt earlier. And even my posture, I feel more comfortable in my posture.
So you're looking at like a 20, 30, like your 20, 30% change in 1 minute. Like that's a big return on investment. And
Huge.
And this is how I approached it. I was like, I tried everything, right? You name it, I tried it. But the things that stuck over the course of years, they had to give me huge bang for their buck. They had to be easy. They had to fit into my busy day. They had to give me not too difficult to learn, because I didn't have a lot of time to invest in, spend X number of years learning something to be able to do it. I didn't have that kind of time. So all the things that have stuck were simple, were quick, were easy, and they gave me huge returns. And then I just bundled them together. And I learned things like that for the body, things like that for the mind, things like that for the spirit. And then I started doing little bits every day. And I saw how if you do something for your body, something for your mind, and something for your spirit every day, you get into this spiral. And the body lifts up the mind, lifts up the spirit, and lifts up the body, right? And then again, and then again. And of course, it's not a straight line, right? You go up, you go down. But if you just stay with that, you can't not move in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
What would be examples of something for your body, something for your mind, and something for your spirit? Because sometimes it may be hard to distinguish what something for your mind is versus what something for your spirit is, and what the difference is.
Right. So let me ask you, like, when you think of mind and spirit, what do you feel is the difference?
Mind for me is more intellectual. Spirit is more around feeling, but body is also around feeling. So there's an overlap then. When I describe mind versus spirit, then it becomes an overlap between spirit and body. So.
Well, and they're all connected, right? They're not
Yeah.
actually parts of us.
Yeah.
We're, but to understand it, it's useful to make these distinctions. It's kind of like a Venn diagram, right? They all overlap, but then they are distinct. When I think of mind, anything that's using words, I would say is mind. Like when you start coming up with positive affirmations, for example. One of my first positive affirmations, positive affirmation is something that you make up that lifts you up, like a sentence. And it usually starts with the words, I am. Because when you declare how you want to be, not as if it's something in the future, but as if it's here now, because your mind does not know the difference between what you make up and what is actually real. Like if you close your eyes, imagine slicing a lemon in half and sucking on it, like you will literally secrete saliva in your mouth, right? That's how powerful the mind is. So to use that to your advantage, one of the first ones I made up was to even give myself permission to slow down and make space to learn something new and not have to do all the time and allow myself time to be. And that sentence was, the less I do, the more I achieve.
Okay.
And that, if I had made something up like, okay, achievement, I don't need to achieve or blah, 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 like that was too hard for me at that time. Like I was wired into achieving. I wasn't going to change that overnight. Like my entire upbringing, and I understand why, like that immigrant mentality that like achieve or die, right?
Yeah.
Those were basically the options. My father drilled that into us, right, from a young age. Like, I'm not going to change that belief overnight. So I at the beginning, I just worked with it. And then I worked on the underlying beliefs. And the underlying belief is like, my self-worth is based on what I achieve. So I started rewriting that to my self-worth is I don't have to earn it. Just being a living, breathing human, I'm worthy. And then I get to decide what I do with that. I don't have to earn my self-worth by achieving things. So, but that took longer, right? So the less I do, the more I achieve. It was like it allowed me space to slow down, to take a pause, to not just keep running, keep doing all the time, being busy and feeling bad when I wasn't busy. Right? Because most people who are high achievers, they go until they're exhausted and they only slow down when they're exhausted.
Yeah. Rest is when you're absolutely wrecked, tired.
So, and my sister actually, she just called me today and told me that my dad fell asleep at the wheel and drove the car into the ditch because that's his way of operating. He pushes himself till exhaustion. And he's 83. These are the consequences of doing that. He could have died.
Yeah.
Luckily he didn't. But it's just like showing me that, okay, that way of being alone, when you take that to the limit, it's not sustainable. So there needs to be some balance.
And
okay, so mind affirmations, the breathing. What we did with the breathing is, I would say it's partly body and it's partly spirit, because when you feel that sense of calm and you feel like your energy is more down here, you're literally pulling your spirit down into your body, because you go out of your body. when you're stressed. And that's why everything feels like it's up here, right? It's not just in your head, it's kind of above your head too. And so pulling it down, like getting grounded and centered, right? That's what that deep breathing can do. And that's kind of a spirit thing. For the body, exercise, number one, like move your body. I don't care how, I don't care how often, like whatever you like to do, just moving your body, because creativity lives not just in your mind, it lives in your whole body. Whenever I learn something new, I learn it and then I'll go and do yoga on the mat, or I'll just dance a little bit, just move my body. And as I'm moving my body, I can literally feel the different ideas like integrating in me, and different things will come into my mind, and everything will start to click. And I'll be like, oh, especially if I'm confused, right, about something, what to do or which direction to go or how to deal with something. I'll think about it for a bit, but then I won't spin my wheels for too long. I'll actually stop, take a break, usually go out into nature, go for a walk, or just do some movement that's not too strenuous, that allows me to also just kind of relax and move at the same time, and create that space for a different part of me to guide me, not just my mind, but a deep, right? That part of you that knows, that part of you that senses, that sixth sense, like allowing that to come in. So that's a big part of flow as well.
Really, really good ways of making that practical. And I think they're really good takeaways for people to implement straight away. I think a lot of our listeners will be interested to understand when you say that you learned flow with your children, and as a mother, what that looks like. And what does that flow look like in motherhood when you have children, young children, children of all ages, and you're right in the thick of it?
Yeah. So the reason I started, like I was shouting at my kids every day. My son, like we used timeout as a punishment. He was 3 at that time. My daughter was 3 months old. We'd just moved to Indonesia, and I was really stressed because, according to CNN, Indonesia was the second worst place on earth after Iraq. It had the Aceh tsunami. This was back in 2005. Aceh tsunami, the Bali bomb. It was a global epicenter for bird flu. I was like literally worried of everything my kids could die of every single day. And that didn't even include like malaria, typhoid, dengue, and all that, those kind of tropical diseases. So I was really miserable. And I was like, this is not a way, like I can't live like this physically. And I went to the gym, I went on the treadmill, and I pushed the thing up to the maximum speed and the maximum elevation. And I was like, just trying to run. I was trying to run out this feeling of fear and just like anger and misery and all that. And then when I exhausted myself, I jumped to the side, I grabbed the handles, and I was like really sucking wind because I was completely winded. And then I looked up and I saw this pink and yellow frangipani flower outside the window of the gym. And we were in Indonesia. We were living at the Four Seasons apartments. I mean, it was beautiful. And I was like, I'm in this beautiful environment with these leather chairs in the gym, this flowers outside. I have staff, because, in Asia, you can have staff, right, to help out with the kids. And I'm miserable. I was like, there's something wrong with this picture. And I decided right then and there that I was going to do the best I could. And then, with the circumstances we didn't, that were uncertain, like get the Tamiflu, pack a bag in case we were deported to the airport. And then I was going to let everything else go. And that was the sort of beginning of not trying to control everything.
Okay.
And because I realized at that point that if I try to control everything that I can't control, that was what was making me miserable. And you can't control kids, right? So this is the thing for high achievers, that their kids do not usually the kids of high achievers, well, sometimes, luckily for us, our kids had the will of the both of us combined. And so they really forced us to change. And our son got really, really hysterical every time we gave him a timeout. And so I realized that we couldn't keep going on this path, and we had to let go of using timeout, which meant we had to let go of punishment. And letting go of punishment meant letting go of fear-based thinking. And so it was excavating all the parts of myself that were not in the flow, right? And without me even knowing it. So that was the beginning of it. I told our son, okay, I'm not the boss of you. And he was like, really? And this big grin. And the initial weeks of that were really good because he was like so happy not to have someone boss him around. But then I realized that we have to actually like get along. And I would ask him to do stuff and he'd be like, no. But then one day he asked me to do something and I said no. He asked me to go downstairs to the garden and like play with him or something. And I was like, no. And then that's when the light bulb clicked. And he was like, oh, neither of us can make each other do anything.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have that kind of a relationship with my child, which is about forcing and control and bossing, right? But we have to get along because we live in the same house. And so that's when the relationship shifted from like authority and submission, right? I'm the authority because I'm the parent. They're the child, so they have to be submissive and just listen to me, right? Because that's how I was raised. And I didn't go to parenting school. I just kind of did what I was raised with. And it changed to mutual understanding and respect because this way was not working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. At three. And I swear, like if I had tried to keep on that track, my son and I would not be talking now. Like he's 21. Like as soon as they get big enough and you're trying to be the boss of them, like good luck. That's why people have problems in the teenage years. But because we shifted that when he was 3 years old and we shifted the whole basis of our relationship to mutual understanding and respect, it doesn't mean we're friends. I'm still his mom. He's still 3. And there's things that I need to do. There's things that he needs to do, but I respect him and he respects me as a human being. He is now like absolutely thriving. And there's another piece of this story that I need to share, which is this is coming out about a month from now on Amazon.
Okay.
And there's another piece of this story I need to share, which is that when he was in grade 6, so he was like 11 years old, 11, 12, kind of like that. We had just moved to a new city. We'd moved a lot and we finally landed then in the Washington, D.C. area in the US. And about a month after school started, like new school, 2,000 kids, he didn't know a single person. He was on the soccer team. He had a math test. He came into my bedroom at like 6 o'clock in the morning and he was just like, Mom, I can't breathe. And I've been sleeping. I woke up to my kid saying, Mom, I can't breathe. And so my heart starts racing. And then I just listened to him and I looked at him and I realized he was having a panic attack, right? Thank God there wasn't like something physically wrong. He was having a panic attack. And I was like, that's when it clicked for me that I needed to teach him the same things I was using to manage my anger, rage, frustration, anxiety, worry, misery, like all of that.
Yeah.
And that began. And so I started, first thing was just getting him to sit down and just being like, and just being a calm, still presence for him. Honestly, that was the biggest thing. Like if I started going into panic because he was panicking, then that would not be helpful for him.
Yeah.
So the first thing was just for me to stay calm, which I had to use tools and the deep breathing, right? Because no one wants to see their kid having a panic attack. You start freaking out. Like it's hardwired in as a mother when you see your child struggling, like it gets you going. Right? Staying calm and then just showing him how to do the breathing, just like we did.
Yeah.
That, by the way, is called 4x4x4 breathing because there's 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, repeat 4 times. That's used by Navy SEALs, like in life and death situations. right? That's how, like when your life is on the line and you have to remain calm, that's what they're doing. And there's hundreds and probably thousands of breathing techniques. That one's just really simple. It's really easy. That's why I
Easy to
use it.
remember.
It's
Yeah.
easy to remember. It's easy to do, right? And I share that with all my clients. So and for a 12-year-old, right? Easy to do. Kids can do it. Breathe in. Because when you're having a panic attack, you're not taking deep breaths. You're like your breath is really shallow and really fast, right? So the first thing physiologically is to switch from the fight or flight nervous system, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, to the sympathetic nervous system. There's two parts of your nervous system. Most people don't know that, but there's a fight or flight response, which gets you amped up so that you can take flight, or you can fight, or you can freeze in the face of danger. And that's what I was using when I was in karate matches, right? But then there's also a relaxation response, which is for eating, resting, and just to get really calm so that your body can rest, digest, and assimilate everything, and then be ready for the next day. So you can actually toggle between these two parts of your nervous system by using your breath.
Yeah.
And my sister's a doctor, and one day she explained to me the actual physiological like what happens when you take a deep breath. And if you're interested in this, or your listeners are interested, I recommend going on Google and looking up some videos and spending like 5 or 10 minutes just so you have the visuals in your mind of what these two nervous systems do in the body. Like when you take a deep breath, it actually slows your heart rate. It's affecting your vagus nerve. It's affecting your organs. There's so much going on physiologically as you switch from parasympathetic to sympathetic nervous system. And so that's what he started doing, just taking deep breaths, right? For a few minutes. And then so within about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes, he'd like no longer shallow breathing, now deeper breathing. He's able to sit. His shoulders weren't up here. They're like more calm. And then we added in another piece, which is the mind. Because his mind is still thinking, oh my God, you have a math test. Oh my God, you have a soccer game. What if you miss the goals? Your teammates are going to hate you. You have no friends. Like his mind is still going off, even though his body is doing the deep breathing. So then we add in the mental piece. All is well. And just a really super simple, general, all-purpose affirmation that can be used in any moment to give the mind a nice shiny ball to focus on so that it doesn't start running around like a wild horse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're just reining in the wild horse with some simple words as you breathe in, all is well. And so the mind starts to calm down, the body starts to calm down. Within 10 minutes, he had gone from panic attack to neutral.
I think a lot of parents will find that really useful in those situations to know how to deal with it.
So simple, right? It's not like he was jumping for joy, but that doesn't matter. Like neutral is awesome. Neutral is highly underrated, right? Where you're not happy, you're not sad, you're just present. You're just there. Then by grade 8, a year later, he asked me on our way home from school one day, he said, Mom, what do other kids do when they feel stressed? Because now he didn't get stressed. And there had been like a suicide in the high school. Like people were experiencing extreme stress, and he didn't get stressed. And he was like, what do other kids do? And I said, well, what do you think they do? Like in high school, kids get stressed. And he thought about it and he was like, oh. And he knew, right? They go into video games, they cut themselves, they do all kinds of violent or risky behavior. They drugs, alcohol, like you name it, right? This is what kids do when they get stressed and they don't have ways of dealing with stress.
In terms of you've covered so much today, Lisa, but if you were to distill it down into 3 key pieces of advice that you would share with our listeners from your own life lessons and experiences, what would those 3 key pieces be?
Okay, the 3 key pieces would be Number one, be kind to yourself. There's always more to learn. There's always more to do. This isn't something more to do, right? This gives you more space to be. And be kind to yourself on the journey, because otherwise you're just adding more. It's like, okay, I'm not doing this right. Listen to that podcast and I just can't do it. I can't do it right. No, anything you're doing is right. It is correct because you're doing it, because you're focusing on it, because you want it. Like listen to that deep part of yourself that wants it. And that part of me that knew I was going to win, that part of you that knows you can't keep going on this path and you need to do something different, like honor that part, right? And then take micro steps. I'm a huge believer in micro steps, not huge leaps. And I've seen with all, like myself, my family, my friends, my clients, micro steps daily are what get you to your goals. So if you do some tiny thing every day, like if you start with just doing the 4x4x4 breath once a day, just start with that.
Yeah.
The key is this to start. And then you bookend your day. Like you do one in the morning, you do one in the evening. I guarantee if you start your day with that, you end your day with that, like things are going to start to happen. And just watch and see what comes up next.
Yeah.
And then do something for the body, little thing, do something for your mind, do something for your spirit. Get outside, right? Look at the sun.
Yeah.
Hug yourself. Little things. Like people, high achievers always want big results and they want them yesterday. But the thing about flow is that it's kind of subtle. She kind of, flow kind of sneaks in there, and it's kind of like the scent of a rose, right? You go into a room and you just smell this hint of a scent of a rose, and it's there and everyone can smell it, and it lifts everybody up just slightly. But it's not like forcing. It's not someone being loud and beating down the thing and saying, listen to me. It's just this subtle little thing that's happening, right? All of a sudden, everybody's just happier. Everybody just gets along better. Like things start to go your way more. Like there's these little subtle changes.
Yeah. Such a beautiful way of describing it.
Surrender.
And yeah. Remember. And you mentioned your book, and I know that you've 2 books, and you mentioned your course earlier on. So for our listeners that were looking to learn more, what are the names of the books, and what's the name of your course that you're doing later in the year?
This book is like my third child.
Okay.
I love all my books, but I recommend, especially for women, read this book. This is written for 12 plus, but every adult who's read this has said it has given them so much. This is flow for kids and adults. It's written, and every single book I write through stories. They're not textbooks. My goal was to put the tools into the hands of children, because they're the ones who have the longest runway with it and who need it the most and are going to be around the most. So it's written for children, but it's got all these layers. I spent 7 years writing this book. It's based on a true story. It's based on my story, but it's fiction. And so I got to add in all the stressful parts of my childhood and the parts where I went into that pit. But then I also got to add in all the things that I learned later on in life. And that's what the dragon teaches the girl. It's a young person's guide to becoming truly who you are. And honestly, it's a woman's guide as well.
Yeah. And that's called Dragonfly.
That's called Dragonfly. If you look up my name, like there's so many books on Amazon called Dragonfly, but if you look up my name, you'll.
So Dragonfly by Lisa MK Ling. Looking forward to it being released on Amazon. My final question, Lisa, for all of my guests is, what other high-performing women should I be speaking to on this podcast, and why?
I was wondering if you ever speak with young people.
Yeah, I haven't as yet, but it's something I haven't considered.
The first person who came to mind, honestly, was my daughter. And not so much because she's like some massive high performer, but when she was 5, she's 19, she's a top softball athlete, she's a straight A student. So she is in a way a high performer, but it's very you wouldn't think of her as that if you met her. She's the most kind, caring, loving person. And when she was 5, she drew this picture in her pre-K class, and it was like, who do you want to be when you grow up? And she drew this stick figure of a girl, and she put on there, I am me. And honestly, like, as a mom, I still have that picture because that became one of my goals. Because I feel like I had gotten trained out of myself, and she helped me come back in.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the essence of high performance. It's not just the external, it's like honoring who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't think of anyone who holds that more than her.
Yeah. It's a very powerful mantra. I am me.
I am me.
It's been such an honor to talk to you. There's so many takeaways for me personally and for our listeners in terms of things that we could do straight away and build up slowly towards that state of flow. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. And it's been my absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on High Performance Woman.
Thank you so much, Joanne. It's really a pleasure for me as well.
Okay. And hopefully I will see you in Manilla very soon.
Absolutely. Like I said, some of the best islands in the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah. Take care.
Thanks. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. You can join the High Performance Woman tribe by subscribing, liking and sharing podcasts with your friends and family, and by following me at High Performance Woman on Instagram and TikTok. I'll see you next time.